J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon said on his bank's quarterly conference call this morning that no one on Wall Street is moved by the increasingly fraught debt debates in Washington because Wall Street assumes the debt cap will be raised no matter what. Is it really a done deal? Here to discuss are the freedom fighters, Fox business anchor Lori Rothman, the Agenda Project founder Erica Payne, and Cato Institute policy scholar Dan Mitchell. Welcome. So how about it? Are we actually going to see the debt ceiling go no matter what? Is this deal already in the bed?
I'll tell you, Michael, I've been talking to economists and market strategists all day, and they're saying this is all political posturing. All you have to do specifically is look at the bond market. Interest rates, yields are depressed. I mean, the 10-year's yielding around 3%. Now, some of that might be because of the rest of the world, especially Europe, dealing with this sovereign debt crisis. So the U.S. is still a big flight to quality. But the bond vigilantes who drive yields up to tell government, give them a message, haven't stepped in yet.
You know, Dan Mitchell, there's a lot of talk that we're having a game of chicken and that President Obama wins either way. If he gets what he wants, he gets more taxes and more debt to spend. If he doesn't and there's a crash, he wins that too. So why not ignore the debt ceiling and say we are where we are? He wins.
Well, there's no question that Geithner and Bernanke are trying to fan the flames of market uncertainty by warning that if Obama doesn't get a blank check, that somehow financial markets will collapse, we'll have another Great Depression. But exactly what this segment is focusing on, interest rates are very low. Obviously, the market is not taking this demagoguery seriously. The bigger thing we should worry about, as you just identified, is are we going to continue on this path of tax and spend, borrow and spend, where the only destination ultimately is we're going to be just like Greece, just like Portugal, and we're going to be in real trouble, not this sort of fake trouble that we're in right now.
Erica, as a Tea Partier, I'm saying, don't you guys get we Tea Partiers are crazy? Didn't you see all the coverage? We're nuts. We aren't going to back down. We believe in principles. Does Wall Street really think that everyone's just going to roll at the end of the day?
Well, first of all, we've never defaulted on our loans before, and so I do think it would be a pretty radical step to do it. So the intellectual jump you have to get over to believe that people would do it, you know, is pretty high. But at the same time, and the Wall Street people I talk to don't believe it, right? So, I mean, I think this is across the board. I think the thing that you have to remember, though, is that you guys are just about crazy enough to do it. And, you know, at a certain point, that just about crazy enough really starts to affect how you can govern a country. And I think we're pushing up against that with Moody's, you know, considering a downgrade and things like that.
I want to ask Lori about that because Moody's basically says it doesn't matter if you don't default. In other words, you can pay all the debt, but if you miss a payment to the Department of Cheese Inspectors, we're going to downgrade you.
Well, let's take a step back and look at the credibility of Moody's and all the other credit ratings agencies. Took a big hit with the financial crisis. So I think that's a large part why Wall Street and investors are ignoring Washington right now.
Well, the next step in this conversation, you remember when George W. Bush was a right-wing ideologue who pushed his politics over the good of the country? Yet that's the same George W. Bush who gave us the TARP rescue plan, which he admits was in direct conflict with his conservative principles. Today we got the debt ceiling crisis, but when President Obama was presented with a short-term solution, he chose ideology instead, saying, quote, "I have reached my limit. This may bring my presidency down, but I won't yield on this." So, freedom fighters, do we really believe that President Obama is going to let the country go into default and turn down a deal because it doesn't give him tax hikes and unlimited spending authority? Dan, is the president as crazy as the Tea Partiers?
The president, I think, is being politically smart, maybe not economically smart, but politically he wants one of two things. He either wants Republicans to cut their own risks by agreeing to a tax increase, or he wants a blank check, so-called clean debt limit. Either way, he wins. If he gets the tax increase, he gets to tax and spend. If he gets the so-called clean debt limit, he gets to borrow and spend. What Obama wants is bigger government, period.
Well, look,
how it's financed, he'll take it either way.
Well, Dan, I'm not going to pretend to be the smartest person ever, like our president, who is, of course, the smartest person ever, I've been told 100 times. But, Erica, do you really believe that the Republicans are smart enough to pass a $100 billion extension, $100 billion in new debt with $100 billion cuts, and they put it on his desk, that he's going to veto it and take the default instead when he's got a deal?
There are actually ways that he can get around the default using the 14th amendment. But leaving that aside for the moment, the question is, how ideologically driven are politicians and how political are they? And I think that the fact of the matter is all politicians are politicians. So, a little bit just leave that topic to the side. And in terms of George Bush, let's remember that 2/3 of the debt that we're in, 2/3 is from the tax cuts that we couldn't afford, and 1/3 is from the wars that we shouldn't have been in. So when you want to talk about, ideology, it's more like stupidity trumping reason rather than an ideological focus.
If only a time to re-debate all your math, which I completely disagree with. But I want to go to Lori on President Obama
You guys
really
aren't that good at math.
having a deal in front of him and saying this is only a short-term deal. I need a long-term deal. How can he say that when he hasn't even offered a long-term plan to deal with Social Security, Medicare, and the big debt?
Oh, those entitlement programs. This is such a tough issue. I just think the president definitely holding out with his philosophy, but I think the way it's all going to sort out is it's all going to be backloaded. All the spending cuts, the tax increases. Let's get some structural changes to fiscal policy, but I don't think we're going to see it for a couple of years.
But just a second. Dan Mitchell, are the Republicans going to take a wimpy program? I promise you a cut in spending tomorrow for a tax hike hamburger today?
That's a great analogy from Popeye. The one I like is the old Peanuts cartoon strip with Lucy holding the football, asking Charlie Brown to come kick it. Every year he gets seduced. She pulls the football away. Charlie Brown winds up on his back. That's what happens every time Republicans get seduced into one of these tax hike deals where they get the tax increases up front, but the so-called promised spending cuts, which of course are fake cuts off a baseline, even the fake cuts never materialize. It's just a way of making government bigger. Now, I don't think Republicans have a whole lot of cards to play because don't forget, Harry Reid controls the Senate, so I don't even think they could ever get anything to Obama's desk to veto. Obama's going to try to scare them into submission. It's that simple.
Erica, the Wall Street Journal today, Carl Rove's column, mentioned a series of things that President Obama has taken off the table because it's just too important. Obamacare's there, okay, it's a disaster, but whatever. He's got high-speed rail on his shall not touch list. You're not even serious about cutting if you've got crappy high-speed rail that almost nobody wants as one of your untouchables. That's a sop to the unions. That's not serious debating.
So China spent $600 billion rebuilding their infrastructure. We have 40% of our country doesn't have access to high-speed internet. Are we prepared for the next
China
century?
also has 10%
I don't
GDP
think
growth,
so.
Erica.
And so we're in a place right now where I actually think that high-speed rail is a good idea. The things that I'll tell you what should be on the table is some of the programs that Republicans refuse to even consider, which is our national security budget is not structured in such a way that it's actually facing the security threats that we have.
National security and choo-choo trains that elite liberal greenies like are
So
not
how
the same
about a
thing.
sponsorship of NASCAR? How about a sponsorship of NASCAR, which the Republicans will not take out of the defense budget?
Erica,
how about marching bands for the military, which Republicans
NASCAR
won't take out of the budget?
bands?
That's a bigger problem to me than light rail.
I'm from South Carolina. You've now crossed the line by criticizing NASCAR.
I love NASCAR. Matt Kenseth, number 17.
When does the government have the authority to take away your kids? When you're abusing them? When you're hurting them, okay. When you're overfeeding them? The freedom fighters return with that debate next.
Next week, the I-Man's live and the heat's rising.
I can't argue with that.
Imus takes on Tom Friedman, Blonde on Blonde, and Sean Hannity. Plus, all your pre-market buzz on Fox Business.
You could save a bundle with Geico's multi-policy discount. Geico, saving people money on more than just car insurance. Geico, saving people money on more than just car insurance.
I'm often asked the question, is investing in gold right for me? In fact, many people think that owning gold is only for the wealthy, but you can own gold with a minimal investment. It's easy to own gold. At Goldline, our clients invest in physical gold, not gold stocks or gold funds. Call Goldline and talk with an account executive who can answer your questions and discuss the available gold products, like our popular European coins or Proof American coins. Your gold is then shipped directly to you, or we will arrange storage for you. Goldline has been helping investors acquire precious metals since 1960, and we work with new clients every day who have decided that it's time to invest in gold. Isn't it time that you consider gold? I invite you to join the thousands of hardworking, satisfied clients who've chosen Goldline to help diversify by investing in gold. Call Goldline now and receive a free investor's kit and the American Advisor newsletter. Our account executives are here 6 days a week to serve you. Give us a call today.
Now, for a limited time, your companion flies free, plus save up to 65%. Call 1-800-SANDALS. Conditions apply.
If you or a loved one was diagnosed with mesothelioma or any other asbestos-related cancer, call now. Mesothelioma is a rare cancer, one of many linked to asbestos exposure. Exposure to asbestos in mills, shipyards, or in the heating, construction, and automotive industries may have put you at risk. Secondhand exposure to people close to you may have also resulted in mesothelioma. Please don't wait.
Call 1-800-292-3875. That's 1-800-292-3875. I'm a non-attorney spokesperson for James Sokoloff, Wellesley, Mass.
Picture this. The government swoops into your home and takes away your kids. Why? Because a bureaucrat thinks your kid is too fat. It's already happened in several states, and at least one Harvard professor thinks it's the right thing to do. Is it? Here to discuss are the freedom fighters. Fox Business anchor Lori Rothman, the Agenda Project founder Erica Payne, and Cato Institute policy scholar Dan Mitchell. So Dan, isn't this like the 1984 Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged nightmare come true? The government sticks your kids on a weight meter and says, "That's it, Dan. They're out of here."
Well, it's not just whether your kid might be a little bit too chubby. It's whether or not you smoke or something like that. Look, there's no doubt that all of us can second guess every other parent out there about possibly 90% of their decisions. And we clearly have a lot of kids that probably could lose a little weight and get off the couch and not play Nintendo all day. But one thing I can say for sure is, well, however bad of a job a parent is doing, if their kid has a little bit too much weight, I guarantee you putting them in government foster care with all the problems associated with that is going to mess that kid up 10 times more than being a little bit chubby.
But you know, Lori, this is not just a little bit chubby. The one thing that needs to be said is we're talking about kids like in the South Carolina case, the kid was 555 pounds, I believe, at the age of 14. And these are kids who are going to pay the price of obesity, which I argue is linked to the lousy parenting. At what point should the state step in?
I don't think the state should step in. I have two young daughters, 4 and 2. I come to work every day because it is so much easier than being a parent. This is the hardest job out there, and I really don't think the government can do a better job raising kids than I can. But you do bring up an extreme example, but I think as the other panelists mentioned here, where do you draw the line? Smoking, alcohol, I mean, it's just, it could go on and on. It's a very bad precedent.
Now, Erica, you want all our kids in a re-education camp, so it's not a big deal for you. I'm kidding. But do you think there is a point where super obese kids should be taken away by the state?
You know, I remember when we saw the Taiwanese baby, I think this fat smoking baby, right? That was a place where I thought, your lifestyle choices have now moved into abuse. And I think that you have to go a long way before your lifestyle choice turns into abuse. But, if I see a kid who's the fat smoking baby, I do think that somebody needs to step in and help that child. And maybe that does involve taking him away from his parents, because, there are lots of great parents like you, and there are lots of, there are some bad parents out there, and children need that protection. I think we as a society
But isn't it part of
deserve
social
to give
services,
them
though, ideally that they
protection.
would recognize that? Because it's neglect is what you're describing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
here's-
And
but
so removing them would only be in those circumstances where that's gone into actually
but
abusive
weight
behavior.
is not necessarily neglect. And Dan, I think one thing people have a problem recognizing is that sometimes you have to have individual bad outcomes for a good policy. I have no doubt that the 555-pound kid needed to be out of that house. He's just gone. But once you set that principle, all of us then have to live under the government with that power.
Yeah, there's the old saying, extreme cases make bad law. As I said in the earlier passage, I'm sure there are lots of parents out there I would second guess who I might think are doing a bad job, but I am very, very leery about giving a bunch of politicians and bureaucrats powers that we know are going to morph and metastasize into something that all of us are going to be horrified about.
So nobody's going to let people go into sort of normal dysfunctional households,
You can't say
and
that.
take kids away. But you're a 6-year-old and you're 80
Right.
pounds, however much that kid weighed, and you're smoking.
Look, I know
your
it happens. We
parents
gotta
are
go.
actually abusing
Erica,
you.
great point. We got to go right there. From New York, defending freedom on behalf of Judge Napolitano, I am Michael Graham. Thank you and good night.